Good morning, Orlando. This is Orlando's news, weather, and traffic here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Filling in for Bud, this is Yaffee.
And I'm Deborah Roberts, and our top stories this morning. 8 are injured in a shooting at a suburban Philadelphia suburb, and Seminole County rejects the River Cross project. We'll have the details coming up in 1 minute.
Controversy over something Trump said on Twitter. Again, we'll talk about that this half hour.
Happy Hump Day. It's 6:01 on News Radio 102.5. 8 people are injured after an argument turned into a shooting at a crowded Walmart in a Philadelphia suburb. It happened yesterday in Chettleton Township, north of Philadelphia. Chief John Fry is with the police department.
As far as the motive goes, from what we can determine right now, seems there was some kind of altercation at the cash register. Words were exchanged. The male pulled the gun from the female's waistband and started shooting.
5 people were shot and 3 others, including 2 police officers, were injured in the chaos after the gunfire. 6 people were taken to the hospital and are expected to survive. Police arrested a man and a woman they say are a brother and sister. This news brought to you by Trustco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. Police in London are identifying the suspect in this week's car crash outside the Parliament. Officers arrested 29-year-old Salih Khader after he ran into 2 cyclists and crashed his car into a security barrier yesterday morning. Witnesses told police it appeared that Khader deliberately swerved his car toward the cyclist and that security barrier. Scotland Yard says local police are familiar with him, but neither British domestic intelligence nor counterterrorism police knew about him before yesterday. Khader is a British citizen who's originally from Sudan. Also overseas, the death toll is now at 35 after a bridge collapse in Italy sends cars plunging more than 150 feet to the ground. Authorities in the coastal city of Genoa say the towering bridge collapsed around midday Tuesday during a severe storm. At least 35 vehicles reportedly went plunging to the ground when a portion of the bridge gave way, landing on warehouses, train tracks, and a riverbed. An Italian news report says several people were pulled from the rubble alive and rushed to a hospital. A police spokeswoman says the official death toll is 35, but that could rise. Construction is underway or was underway on the bridge at the time, but authorities are not yet certain what caused it to collapse.
That's good news, though, that they were able to find some survivors.
Yeah.
In the collapse.
Apparently this bridge has it's as old as the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been some concern for a long time, as I'm sure we're hearing the same sentiment here in the States, about Italy's aging infrastructure and finding the money necessary to shore up bridges like this, which was the subject for concern for a long time.
Yeah, I'm reading here right now on the BBC that there was a structural engineer who lectures at Genoa University. Apparently, he wrote in 2016 that it may be more economical to rebuild the bridge because of the ongoing maintenance costs. This was, last year. Says there are errors in this bridge.
Right. Sooner
or later, it will have to be replaced. I don't know when.
And it turns out less than 2 years later, and the bridge collapses.
I mean, it's chilling to hear that about 2 years ago.
It really, really is. A part of Seminole County one resident calls a real jewel will remain untouched. The county commission voted unanimously yesterday to reject the proposed River Cross development near Chuliota. Former state lawmaker Chris Dorworth was behind the project that would have built more than 1,000 homes and apartment units on rural land near the Econ River. The vote came after what the Orlando Sentinel reports was 8 hours of discussion. Dozens of residents who spoke against the project said it was too big and would bring too much traffic. Environmentalists also opposed the project for its potential impact on the Econ River. There's something new at Florida Public Schools this year. The words "In God We Trust" must be displayed prominently somewhere on school grounds.
Oh, that's right.
The requirement comes from a sweeping education bill passed by the legislature and signed by Governor Rick Scott back in March. The bill's sponsor says it's a way to teach children about the national and state motto printed on currency and included on the state flag. And finally, speaking of school.
Yes.
Did you ever dislike the lunch lady?
No, I don't think I ever have.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's kind of like a stereotype.
It is, but there's reason why.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 Connecticut lunch ladies are accused of stealing nearly $500,000 from school cafeterias.
Really?
Yes.
Like actual money or like
actual
stuff?
Money.
Oh.
Sisters Joanne Pasquarelli and Marie Wilson worked at 2 different public schools and both handled cash. Investigators believe the sisters, now in their 60s, pocketed the money as they rang up sales between 2012 and 2017. This was why I could never get the chocolate milk. After a lengthy investigation, they've been charged with larceny and fraud.
Did they just give you regular milk? Is that what happened? It's very upsetting. So nobody, what, did they drive to work in a Ferrari? And people were like, how is the lunch lady affording a Ferrari?
I don't know. It'll be interesting to find out how they got busted, though, especially considering they worked for two different schools.
Yeah, that's true.
You'd think it would be easy to pay. Oh, okay, well, they worked at the same school. But no, two different schools pocketed nearly $500,000.
Wow.
Not a bad day when you're a lunch lady, I guess. WFLA News Time at 6:07. Watch as dramatic video captures a 12-year-old boy being rescued from floodwaters in the Northeast. You can see it for yourself at 1025WFLA.com. The first hour of Good Morning Orlando with Yaffee starts now.
News, weather, and traffic for the best audience in talk radio. This is Good Morning Orlando on News Radio 1025.
Thanks, Deb. And Deb will be giving us the news at the top and bottom of every hour.
It's my 7-year anniversary today.
Is it really?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
I know. Seems
7
like forever, doesn't it?
Years. It does not. Well, I mean, I've been here longer, so I don't know exactly when my anniversary is, but
August 15th, 2011 is mine.
wow, I remember when you came on board.
Yeah?
7 years.
And you still
Congrats.
have that same look in your eye. Thank you very much.
The look of happiness is what I have. No, I'm really glad you're here. We have so much fun.
Yeah, we do.
And, you know, when I'm hosting, it's obvious how much fun we have. But when I'm producing every day, it's just good to have you here. We have lots of great conversations behind the scenes that people don't know about. But
No, they don't. They don't, but they should. And it's been great working with you. You're awesome.
Yeah, and we're both now fellow cat lovers.
Yes, we are.
All these years of her being a dog lover and I being the cat lover, she has a cat now. So that's another thing we talk about.
Still a dog lover, but yeah.
All right, and we have Paul, who is producing today as well, and Steph screening your calls at 407-916-5400. So, believe it or not, we have to talk about something Trump said on Twitter again.
No.
I know, very shocking. And I want your take on what he said. 407-916-5400. We have that and Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 1025 WFLA. All right, so here is the tweet by President Trump yesterday that caused a lot of the controversy and caused a lot of the debate yesterday and a lot of the overreaction yesterday, as, usually happens when Trump tweets something. Here it is. Trump talking about this whole controversy between him and Omarosa. Omarosa is still claiming that Trump used the N-word, that there is a tape somewhere out there in the ether that proves that he used the N-word, that Trump is a racist and corrupt and all these things. Trump is, of course, firing back. And Trump said this: when you give a crazed, crying lowlife a break and give her a job at the White House, I guess it just didn't work out. Good work by General Kelly for quickly firing that dog. Now, obviously, as you can tell, because the topic of the week has been racial relations and Trump, is Trump a racist? A lot of people interpreted that last thing he said. General Kelly for quickly firing that dog. Those words, that dog, they interpreted that as racist. Now, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders yesterday was asked about this, and this is what she said in the press briefing.
He always fights fire with fire, and he certainly doesn't hold back on doing that across the board. Look, the president, this has absolutely nothing to do with race and everything to do with the president calling out someone's lack of integrity. The idea that you would only point a few of the things that the president has said negative about people that are minorities. The fact is the president's an equal opportunity person that calls things like he sees it. He always fights fire with fire, and he certainly doesn't hold back on doing that across the board.
So here's the thing about what Sarah Sanders says. She's right. That is actually a very true statement. Trump is very much an equal opportunity basher, and he definitely always fights fire with fire. Now, in terms of that dog being a racial thing, the problem is Trump, all you have to do is search through Trump's Twitter, and I have a bunch here of Trump basically calling a lot of different people the same thing. And for some reason, it's usually in the context of a firing that dog. It's not really an expression I'm aware of, but he says it all the time. For instance, in 2016, he said David Gregory got thrown off TV by NBC, fired like a dog. In 2016, he also said about Mitt Romney had his chance to beat a failed president, but he choked like a dog. There's more tweets. Says, McMiller, I'm now going to teach you a big boy lesson about lawsuits and finance, you ungrateful dog. Said that in 2013. About Michael Wolff's book, he said Michael Wolff is a total loser who made up stories in order to sell this really boring and untruthful book. He used sloppy Steve Bannon, who cried when he got fired and begged for his job. Now sloppy Steve has been dumped like a dog. You know, a lot of these people are like that he's saying this. He said that in 2000. He said that earlier this year. Bill Marclip, when he got fired from ABC, in fact, fired like a dog. Said that in 2013. Trump, why is it necessary to comment on Ariana Huffington's looks? Because she is a dog who wrongfully comments on me. Obama called Reverend Wright his friend, counselor, and great leader, then dumped him like a dog. Said that in 2012. He has said similar things about, let's see, I have a total, he said it about Mubarak. He said it about Ted Cruz. He said it about a union leader back in 2016. He said it about Robert Pattinson, Kristen Stewart back in 2012. Over and over again, he uses this expression like a dog. So in terms of it being a racist thing, I actually believe Sarah Sanders is right in terms of this comment. This is just an expression by Trump, and he's an equal opportunity basher. That being said, is this stuff a president should be tweeting? Is this helpful? As Sarah Sanders said there, he likes to fight fire with fire. And every time I ask people what they think, you know, the real hardcore Trump supporters, what they think about Trump's Twitter rants, they say, he fights. That's why I like him. He's a fighter. But I'm telling you, there is a big segment of the population and a big segment of the Republican Party who doesn't like this, who puts up with Trump because they like his policies, but are tired of these controversies around his Twitter. What side of this debate are you on? 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. I know it really doesn't matter in the big scheme of things because it's not going to change. I get it. And yes, Trump is president.
I don't know if that's true.
If it's what?
If it doesn't matter in the big scheme of things.
Well, okay. Well,
because everybody says that now until the next guy's the president.
Well, that's a good point, and there's actually some other points I want to make on that as well. We have that and Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. So I'm getting a bunch of texts, and we got some calls coming in on this take on whether this is useful when Trump goes on these personal attacks, these Twitter rants personally against people. I just want to say one thing. I don't want Trump to stop tweeting in general. I believe Trump's Twitter, I believe the president of the United States using his Twitter account can be a very useful and powerful thing. I really do. There's just a part of me that wishes he would use it more wisely. For instance, when I looked at his Twitter, I was just looking at his Twitter a second ago. He has tweet after tweet after tweet about the special counsel, about Robert Mueller, the witch hunt, Peter Strzok, and then Omarosa. He had one tweet about the terror attack in London. That was fine. Another terrorist attack in London. These animals are crazy, must be dealt with through toughness and strength. I'm okay with those kind of tweets. I want more tweets that deal with the job rather than this sort of personal attack reality TV stuff.
Yeah,
that's what I want.
Where's the policy? Where's the I'm working on this for the vets, and where's the,
And he does that sometimes,
but nowhere near as much as everything else.
But it gets buried in the other stuff. And I don't even say, he doesn't even have to sound like a politician when he says some of this stuff. I don't care necessarily about all that. I just want him to focus more on that stuff because we have an election coming up that needs to be won. Midterm elections and then the general. I don't know if this helps him. Now, on the text line, we have people on both sides of this. One person said, patriot-minded U.S. citizens love tweets by Donald J. Trump. One thing in media that is authentic, snowflake journalists can't handle the truth. Another person says, I'm drinking too much media Kool-Aid. He is not a politician. But another person said this, said, I'm a Trump supporter, but I really wish he really wouldn't use this kind of language when he tweets. Let's take some calls here. Let's go to Kevin in Melbourne. Kevin, what's your take on this?
Hey, Yaffee. My take is that I completely support what President Trump is tweeting, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think that it's him expressing his opinion, just like we express our opinion on Twitter, and I don't think there's anything wrong in it. You don't have to not express your opinion just because you're president. Just because other presidents haven't done it doesn't mean he can't do it. So I completely support what he's saying.
All right, Kevin, I appreciate your call. I mean, I'm totally sure a lot of the audience agrees with you.
One word.
What?
Obama.
What?
If Obama had gotten on Twitter and said, crying Paul Ryan is mad that he can't get the votes to stop health care reform, all of the right side of the political spectrum would have lost their minds.
I think that's a good point. One person says this, on the text line, says, Trump says dog, Hillary Clinton says deplorable. Why such the outrage about what Trump says? Well, here's the thing. Why can't we be outraged at both?
That's what I was going to say. Weren't we outraged at what Hillary Clinton said?
I was. A lot of people on the right were.
Yeah.
Just because one thing is true doesn't mean the other thing isn't true. Why can't both be outrageous? The whataboutism always annoys me because it's like, oh, well, Obama did this. You're right. That was bad, too. Let's take another call. Let's go to Eric in Claremont. Eric, what's your take?
Hi. Well, to be politically correct, I'm a Mexican-American. For those liberals that are out there, I support Trump. The media's been whacking this guy. Even if he did everything, he rose people from the dead, they'd still find something about it. Every time they look for him, it's always about a race thing. And you know what's funny? I call into this show. I love this show. I got people telling me that the show's racist, and that I'm racist for listening to you guys. And I like you guys bring the points. You let people that agree and disagree on the phone. But you know what? You can't satisfy everybody. And
that's
this
true.
is his way of letting people know that, you know what, the media's not going to give me nothing. They're going to cover things up. And Trump brings at least attention to it, like it or not. But he has to fight because surely the media's not telling the truth on it.
Gotcha. All right. I appreciate your call on that.
Everybody's happy when it's their person. When it's President Elizabeth Warren, make sure you all are singing the same song.
Oh, God. Please not Elizabeth Warren.
I had to pick the first. No. I had to pick the person.
Ugh.
When it's President
Please
Elizabeth
God,
Warren,
no.
Please make sure everybody's singing the exact same song.
Why do you have to put that image in my head of a President Warren?
Well, because people take for granted the fact that the president sets a precedent, and nobody ever goes back on that precedent. It only gets worse and worse and worse. When the president sets a precedent, it is not the ceiling, it's not the top, it's not as high as we're going to go. It's the now new floor. It's where we start. And so Trump's tweets are where we're going to start with whoever the next president is.
I will say it's a good point. Where does all this lead? I've been asking that about many different things lately. Where does all this lead? Where does it lead? 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. Deborah Roberts is coming in with the news right now. It's 6:30 here on Good Morning Orlando. So, Deb, one of the big topics on the show yesterday was the Stand Your Ground case in Southern Florida. The shooter there was arrested and charged with manslaughter, and apparently he's going to make a court appearance.
Yeah, actually he made his first court appearance yesterday, and the Clearwater Stand Your Ground shooter, Michael Drake, on a manslaughter charge. Bond remains at $100,000, and he'll have to wear an ankle monitor and avoid contact with the family of Marquise McLaughlin, the man he's accused of shooting. Outside the Pinellas County Courthouse, attorney Benjamin Crump, who represents McLaughlin's girlfriend, believes the state's Stand Your Ground law will be changed eventually.
We are a government for the people, by the people. And just because they decided in Tallahassee not to have a special session on Stand Your Ground, where the people of Florida get to have a special session this November.
Prosecutors say they're suspending Draca's concealed gun permit. The next step is a Stand Your Ground hearing for the 48-year-old. Draca's supporters are also raising money to bail him out of jail. This news brought to you by Trustco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. Meanwhile, Draca's lawyer hopes his case will lead to changes in the Stand Your Ground law. Lisa Clifton is representing Draca pro bono after she says he rejected a public defender and 7 other lawyers. Clifton tells ABC Action News she hopes she can show the state needs to change the way the law is applied. 2 teenagers are under arrest in connection with Saturday's deadly shooting of a 7-year-old Heidi Villanueva in Jacksonville. Sheriff Mike Williams says 17-year-old Trevante Phoenix and Abrian Price were plotting to rob someone during a private gun sale, but they brought along a friend, 19-year-old Stanley Harris III, who decided to open fire from a distance.
Harris opened the driver's door of a black Kia that he was in and started firing rounds at Phoenix and Price. Phoenix returned fire during this exchange. That exchange tragically resulted in the victim, Heidi, being struck in the head by one of the bullets.
Phoenix and Harris are in custody while Price is still on the loose. Phoenix and Price face murder charges, and Harris is accused of possessing a gun as a convicted felon. 7-year-old Heidi Villanueva was sitting in her dad's car when a stray bullet fired by Harris hit her in the head. And a man accused of killing his girlfriend is pinning the blame on his dogs. Justin Pruitt was arrested yesterday for last month's shooting that killed Tiffany Lynn Quanti at their home in Lake Nona. Police say Pruitt at first blamed one of the couple's dogs for the shooting and also for the scratches Pruitt had on his arm and stomach. Officers thankfully weren't convinced, and Pruitt is now being held without bond. You can get these stories and more at 1025WFLA.com. The first hour of Good Morning Orlando continues now with Gina Cervetti and the Bloomberg Business Report.
Yes, Gina, live from New York City, joins us now. Good morning, Gina.
Good morning.
So what do the stock futures look like today?
Right now, the stock futures are indicating a lower Wall Street open this morning. Dow futures down 103. Sounds worse than it is. That's lower by about 0.4%, but certainly looks like some losses at the opening bell as investors continue to be tested by the recent Turkey-induced turmoil. Here in the U.S. today, we're watching for a couple of things. More on that in just a moment. Yesterday, we did see a higher Wall Street close, although at this time of year, pretty normal to see this trading volume remaining relatively light. The Dow was up 112, or about 0.5% to 25,300. The S&P rose 18, or about 0.6 to 2840. The Nasdaq was up 51 points. That's a gain of about 0.7%. And the Bloomberg Orlando Index had a good day. It gained 1.2% in the session.
And what else is ahead today?
Well, namely, we have July retail sales, Michael, and they probably got a boost from Amazon's Prime Day promotion. That's set to be a bright spot in an otherwise subdued report reflecting drags from auto sales and fuel prices. July sales estimated to be up about 0.1% month over month, 0.4 if you take out cars and gasoline. It's also worth noting that other retailers such as Target, Best Buy, and Walmart were all running promotions as well to coincide with Prime Day.
All right, and new Glassdoor report examines highest-paying jobs. So those looking for a high-paying job, want to listen up right now.
That's healthcare. The new report from Glassdoor showing that healthcare jobs offer the highest median-based salary. Physicians top the list with a median salary of almost $196,000, followed by pharmacy managers and then pharmacists. But 13 of the 25 highest-paying jobs this year are in tech. Enterprise architect was at the top of that list at almost $116,000. So the tech sector continues to outperform here as a whole when it comes to highest paying jobs.
And the future of television, there's a lot of competition there, a lot of questions on where it's going in this country. But you have a story about what the next generation TV service will look like.
Well, from Verizon, that company's teamed up with Apple and Google as its first video providers for a super-fast 5G wireless service that it plans to launch first in 4 cities this year. The home broadband service making its debut first in L.A., Houston, Sacramento, California, and newly announced Indianapolis. Verizon shelved its own online TV efforts, but eventually they want to compete nationally against internet and pay TV providers like AT&T and Comcast, and that's where these new partnerships come in.
And this is not too surprising, but MoviePass, their parent, has a bad quarter.
I know you have MoviePass. You have, right?
Yeah, for now.
You've done it, right. So you've probably experienced their problems. But unfortunately for both customers and the company here. But the parent company is called Helios and Matheson. They posted a far bigger loss last quarter, also raising questions the company is itself about its own future without getting more capital. To reduce its widening losses, as you may know, MoviePass ended its $9.95 a month movie a day service, replaced it with a plan that allows 3 films a month at the same price. Shares of Helios and Matheson have lost almost all their value this year, trading below 10 cents.
Below 10 cents. That's like unheard of. All right, Gina, thank you so much, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.
Take care, Michael.
And we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. So if you've kept track of the news at all for the past month, you would know that there is a debate going around with Trump in the media and Trump's legal team on whether Trump should sit down and talk under oath to Robert Mueller. Now, so far, the Trump legal team, including Rudy Giuliani, has said over and over and over again, no, we don't want him to talk with Mueller, and if he does, there's going to be all these preconditions to it before he actually sits down and talks to him. There are some other people who are saying he shouldn't sit down under oath and talk to him, but he should answer written questions. So he gets a list of written questions and gets back to it later and sends in written answers. That would probably be the best option, in my opinion, if he's going to talk to him. There is other people like Trump himself who has said, talk to him. Go ahead, talk to him if you have nothing to hide. And I saw this all over the media yesterday. Well, if he has nothing to hide and he tells the truth, who cares? There's no perjury trap unless you lie. I think that's a little bit naive, and any lawyer will tell you, no. Now, there's a new poll out, CNN poll, that says 70% polled believe, this includes many Republicans, believe it or not, 70% believe that the president should testify for Mueller. Now, another interesting poll out, part of this poll, is 66% of the country say they think he should complete his investigation before this November's congressional elections, while just 26% say that shouldn't be his goal. So you have the majority of America, which includes a lot of Republicans, a lot of Democrats, who believe that the investigation's too long and it needs to be wrapped up, and who believe that President Trump should testify to Robert Mueller. So on this issue on whether Trump should testify to Robert Mueller, I wanted to play a cut here from Alan Dershowitz. I know I play him a lot, but on this issue, I really like his take on this issue a lot of the time, and he seems the most fair-minded when it comes to this Mueller investigation. And he was on Tucker Carlson's show earlier this week and asked whether or not he thinks Trump will testify to Robert Mueller under oath, and whether it's a good idea in this whole talk about, well, if he has nothing to hide, why not just testify? Why not just do it? And I thought his take was sort of a voice of reason on this, and this is what he said.
I think what's going to happen is Giuliani will make Mueller an offer he can't accept, to paraphrase The Godfather. And that way, Trump will be able to say, look, I wanted to testify, but it was Mueller who turned down a reasonable request by our attorney. Look, no lawyer would ever allow a client to testify under these circumstances. All they have to do is ask him one question. Did you know about the meeting in the Trump Tower with your son? If he answers that question truthfully, that he didn't know if that, in fact, is the truth, he could still be charged with perjury, lying to a government official, because we have Michael Cohen, who says he did know. And you never allow your client to say something that could be contradicted by another witness, because the prosecution can choose to believe that other witness.
See, there's a lot more that goes into this other than, well, if Trump has nothing to hide, he should testify. This is why many, many lawyers will tell you, and maybe this is something we can ask Jeff Kaufman later, who's doing his legal brief segment with Deb at 8:40 this morning, about this. Because there's a lot of times when a client is even innocent, and the lawyer will say, don't say anything. There's a specific reason for that. So just because Trump doesn't testify to Mueller doesn't mean it's because he's going to lie. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. I want to continue this conversation in a sec, and I also want to talk about this charge of whether President Trump is obstructing justice, because that's another thing that came up. It came up on the Sunday shows over the weekend as well, and so far I haven't seen any real evidence of that. We have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic as well in 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. So there is no doubt in my mind that part of the Mueller investigation is looking into whether the President of the United States, President Trump, had obstructed justice in terms of Russia and FBI and all that stuff, and is obstructing justice. Now, I just want to say for the record on the terms of if Trump should testify, a lot of people says if he has nothing to hide, he should testify. I mean, there's a reason why we have things like, say, the Fifth Amendment. That wasn't to protect the guilty, it was also to protect the innocent for certain reasons. But I want to get back to this idea on whether the President of the United States can obstruct justice. A lot of people believe that when Trump is actually, the Trump lawyers are actually denying that this conversation ever happened. So I just want to put that out there. But some people are saying that when Trump talked with Comey and said about Michael Flynn, I hope you can let this go, that is obstructing justice by saying, I hope you can let this go. The Trump team is denying that this conversation ever happened, but if it did happen, is that considered obstruction of justice? Well, it's an interesting conversation to have, but Rudy Giuliani was on State of the Union with Jake Tapper on Sunday. And I thought he actually made some really good points on this that a lot of people aren't thinking of whether this would constitute obstruction of justice. I don't think it does. And I think Giuliani makes a good point on why, and this is what he said.
The statement, go easy on him, is hardly an obstruction. Obstruction involves a threat. Obstruction involves false testimony. Obstruction involves an offer of money. It has to be corrupt. Just saying, exercise your prosecutorial discretion to give a general a break. I had that happen all the time to me when I was a prosecutor.
I think he's exactly right. I think if they're saying something like that is considered obstruction of justice, I frankly think it's a very weak case. Doesn't necessarily mean it will work out for him politically, but I think it's a weak case. I don't think you're going to be able to get the president on that. Now, Rudy Giuliani continued on this point later on in the conversation. This is what he said.
Well, there are people who argue that he could never obstruct justice. I think that's a too far-fetched an argument. We don't have to make it, obviously. I mean, suppose a president would put a gun to someone's head and say, I'm going to kill you unless you stop testifying or don't testify or say what I want you to say. Obviously, I can't imagine that isn't an obstruction of justice. I think the narrower argument is when he's exercising his power as president. Obviously, using a gun is not exercising his power as president, and he's firing somebody. Then it becomes very, very questionable whether it can be an obstruction of justice.
Now, Rudy isn't the only one making this point. Other people have made this point as well, and I think it's an excellent point. If the president was doing something illegal while trying to stop the investigation, like you said, putting a gun to someone's head or paying someone off, that's what Nixon did. He tried to pay someone off. That's what was really obstruction of justice. But merely using his presidential power by firing Comey, he could even fire Mueller, and that wouldn't be considered obstruction of justice because it's in his power of president. And so if he did something like that and they try to argue that that's obstruction of justice, I think it's a weak case. I don't think it would go anywhere. I don't think that's obstruction of justice. You may not like it. The Democrats could still try to impeach him over it for political reasons. But in terms of the idea of obstruction of justice, I don't think they have anything yet. I don't think there's anything there. I don't think his tweets are obstruction of justice. I don't think what he said to Comey is obstruction of justice. And I think that's a really good point. That's not really getting out there because the president does have the power to do these things. He can fire Comey for any reason he wants. He can fire Mueller for any reasons he wants. That's his power as president. And even Comey admitted to that in one of his testimonies. So I thought that was something that was kind of overlooked over the weekend. It's been a debate that's been going on whether he should testify and whether he's obstructing justice. I think the evidence on that is weak. All right, Deborah Roberts is going to come in at the top of the hour. She's going to talk about that story, the Stand Your Ground shooter who was charged with manslaughter now. He makes a court appearance, and Florida's pill spill is prompting an additional opioid lawsuit. 6:58 here on Good Morning Orlando. Good Morning Orlando. This is Orlando's news, weather, and traffic here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Filling in for Bud, this is Yaffee.
And I'm Deborah Roberts. And our top stories this morning, the Clearwater Stand Your Ground shooter makes a court appearance, and Florida's pill spill is prompting an additional opioid lawsuit. We'll have the details coming up in 1 minute.
So it has been 6 months since the shooting in Parkland. Do you feel like your kids' schools are safer today? We'll talk about that this half hour.
Happy Hump Day. It's 7:02 on News Radio 102.5. The 48-year-old who shot and killed a man outside of a Clearwater convenience store last month is being held on $100,000 bond after making a first court appearance Tuesday. Michael Draka shot and killed Marquise McLaughlin last month in a dispute over a handicapped parking space. Witness Richard Kelly says Draka made threats against him over that exact same spot.
He asked me, was I handicapped? I said, obviously, I'm driving a tanker. I'm not handicapped. I asked him, was he handicapped? He stated no. He said, my mom is. He just totally flipped out, called me every N-word, saying he was going to shoot me, he was going to kill me.
Draco was arrested Monday after the Pinellas Pasco State Attorney charged him with first-degree manslaughter, and that witness says that he shudders to think what could have happened if the convenience store owner hadn't come out and ended that confrontation between Draka and this particular witness.
So I'm not a lawyer, and you're going to be talking with a legal expert later in the show. But could they call who you just played as a witness in this case?
I would imagine so.
I feel like that could be damaging.
Very much so.
To him. Wow.
But since you and I don't have the legal expertise that would help us out with that, we're definitely going to ask Attorney Jeff Kaufman during my legal briefs segment with him this morning at 8:40.
I also remember that Jeff thought this was a stand your ground case. He agreed with the sheriff there. So the prosecutor disagrees with Jeff. I'm sure Jeff will not be afraid to give his opinion on that.
I've noticed he isn't afraid to do that. Yeah, no. Definitely not. A Pinellas County man, meanwhile, is being blocked in his efforts to free Michael Draka from jail. Clearwater's Kurt Creelman started a GoFundMe page to raise $100,000 in bail money for Draka, but the website shut it down. GoFundMe sent a letter to Creelman saying it doesn't allow campaigns for the legal defense of someone accused of violence. Creelman tells News Channel 8 he doesn't like the Stand Your Ground law, but he feels bad that Draka has to sit in jail while we, as a society, try to figure it out. Hillsborough County is suing 14 drug companies for the opioid crisis, which they're referring to as a pill spill. Attorney Mike Moore says the lawsuit filed accuses the companies for aggressively marketing the highly addictive drugs.
Sure, some doctors are prescribing it that they shouldn't be prescribing, that were duped by these drug companies, but we think there's a huge black market of opioids here, and it's caused a disaster.
The suit also targets distributors for allowing local drugstores to buy 50 times more opioids than the average large drugstore in the state. State Attorney General Pam Bondi filed a lawsuit in Pasco County against the largest opioid manufacturers and distributors just a few months ago. A new study is reporting Louisiana is among the worst states to have a baby. Wallet Hub looked at 26 key measures such as cost, healthcare accessibility, and baby friendliness. Louisiana comes in at number 48 overall on the list, in front of only South Carolina, Alabama, and Mississippi. Although Louisiana is among one of the best states for the lowest average annual cost of infant care, they're among the states with the highest infant mortality rate, fewest OBGYNs per capita, and the fewest pediatricians.
How do you measure baby friendliness?
I guess for services available to parents.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Baby friendly in terms of it being safe.
I was like, they just don't like babies? baby comes along, they're just mean to him. Stupid baby, get out of my state. Sorry.
You need a vacation. In local news, officials at Orlando International Airport say oversized unknown liquids found in a passenger's luggage yesterday turned out to be herbal tea. The hazmat team from the Orlando Fire Department was called in, though, to test this substance, along with homemade soap also found in the bag. The passenger was questioned by the FBI and released, but was trespassed from the airport and not allowed to fly. 2 TSA agents and an airport employee who were exposed to the bag and the liquids were transported to a hospital out of an abundance of caution.
Oh, wow.
That's some soap and tea.
Shows how on edge we are these days.
I know. Get trespassed from the airport, no longer allowed to fly from that airport because of soap and herbal tea.
Was this the carry-on bag or?
I believe it was the carry-on bag.
Okay, yeah, because you're not supposed to have that stuff in your
You're not supposed to have, yeah, definitely not. And definitely not if it's going to send employees to the hospital.
Right.
And finally, it's National Relaxation Day.
Oh.
Yeah, the holiday reportedly started in 1985. It's a day that encourages people to take a break from their daily routine and do things that are not stressful, like reading a book. Get back in there, Paul.
Paul's leaving.
Watching television or taking a day off work. You don't get the day off after you've already started your day, though.
Yep. No relaxation for you.
I know.
But I will fully celebrate this day after the show.
That's exactly what I was thinking, my friend. My sentiment exactly. WFLA News Time at 7:07. Read about Maryland firing its strength and conditioning coach following a player's death at 1025WFLA.com. The second hour of Good Morning Orlando starts now.
News, weather, and traffic for the best audience in talk radio. This is Good Morning Orlando on News Radio 1025.
So here's a headline from a student of Parkland, former student who was at the school during the shooting. It says, today marks 6 months since the tragedy struck my school. Nothing has changed, and that's an absolute disgrace. 6 months since Parkland. Do you feel like your kid's school is any safer? We're going to talk about that later this half hour. We have a word from Deb and Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 1025 WFLA. So yesterday was the 6 month. It marked the 6 months since the tragedy that struck Parkland 6 months ago. And some are complaining, at least in Broward County, that nothing has really changed. I know a lot of you out there are probably on the way to taking your kids to school. School started in Seminole County last week, Orange County this week. And I know a lot of you are probably concerned about this. Concerned about if the schools are safe for your kids. Are you concerned? What have you seen since the start of this year? Has anything changed? Is it a noticeable change? Do you feel better or do you feel worse? 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. Well, there's a student in Parkland, Kyle Kashuv. He writes for the Daily Wire, and this is what he says. Today marks 6 months since tragedy struck my school. Nothing has changed, and it's an absolute disgrace. He says, my school, Major E. Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, is about to start classes, which it did. It's start classes today, along with the rest of Broward County. But the schools are in chaos and still not secured. He says, for months after February 14th attack that left 17 people dead at my school, the Broward County School Board promised that Stoneman Douglas would be the site of a pilot program for metal detectors. Donations and offers of metal detectors and other school security measures came flooding in. It says 12 days before school starts, the school board announced that it hadn't properly anticipated a long list of considerations. Those considerations range from privacy concerns to how metal detectors would impact school start times by creating bottlenecks at the entrance. This is a concern many people I've talked to had, where if you have a metal detector to get in the school, you still have that bottleneck area, and that could be a security risk. How do you prevent that security risk? He continues on here. He says, instead of promised armed guards, we have received unarmed security staffers with little to no ability to protect. They are utterly incapable of stopping an active shooter. Yeah, I mean, all they would be able to do is probably call the police if they're unarmed. Stand with Parkland, a group formed by victims' families, called for the entire school board to be fired on an account of its indecisiveness in fighting and policy reversals. He says, when a killer attacks a school, what matters is how quickly someone with a gun can intervene. Armed guards are better than unarmed ones, but being in uniform makes them an instant target for attackers. If a killer can eliminate the only officer with a gun, he can then shoot other victims as well. Stationing 2 armed guards would make a difference, but it would come at great financial cost to do this at every school across the country. And he says he doesn't feel like the school is safe anymore. He says, exactly 6 months removed from the Parkland tragedy, we must reflect and be blunt with ourselves. The country isn't seriously addressing the issue of school safety. This is an absolute shame and something that makes every school vulnerable to another shooting. How do we protect our schools? Last week, we interviewed Sheriff Grady Judd, who has his Guardian program, which he trained armed guards who will be on the school. They went through an extensive training program, and they will be armed. There are other schools, believe it or not, that were against having any armed guards or any armed school staff that are now starting to implement it because they realize that they're not going to have enough police to be able to be in all these schools, and they need somebody armed to protect the school. So they're training staff to be armed to protect the school. Is that the solution? Is metal detectors the solution, or are metal detectors just going to make it even worse with the bottlenecks? More mental health program. All these things have been talked about. But it's been 6 months. Has anything really changed? I'm not in school. I don't have kids in school. But I know a lot of you have kids in school. How do you feel today? 407-916-5400. Text to 23680, where standard message and data rates apply. We'll take your calls and texts next. And we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. So this, according to the Orlando Sentinel this week, said in the wake of February 14th shooting of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland that left 17 students and employees dead, lawmakers provided $400 million to Florida districts, mostly for improving campus security and mental health services. This allocation includes $97.5 million for a hiring of additional security personnel. Instead of bringing in more law enforcement, districts can allow some schools' personnel to carry firearms on campus or hire additional non-law enforcement employees to serve as guardians. Some counties that initially dismissed this idea of hiring the armed guardians have changed course, deciding to use guardians to fill openings where law enforcement officers weren't available. There's actually schools across the country and other states that have been doing this for years, have armed staff members, and they haven't had problems. I think it's one of the best solutions. Let's take calls here. Let's go to Steve in Winter Springs. Steve, what is your take on securing our schools 6 months after the Parkland tragedy? Steve, you there? Steve from Winter Springs, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I work for, right here in Winter Springs, I work for Calico Metal Detectors.
Okay.
And we're the oldest company for selling metal detectors in the world. But I have been trained on walkthrough detectors at Garrett Metal Detectors in Texas twice.
Uh-huh.
And I have been able to set up a walkthrough because you can adjust the sensitivities in the different zones in a walkthrough. And so that a child or a kid can walk through with their backpack with all the general stuff that kids have, and it won't set the machine off. But if there was a gun or a knife in that backpack, it would set the machine off.
Steve, here's the question I have for you, though, is do they have to go in one at a time, or can it be like a general flow of students going through it?
Well, that's what I was coming to.
Okay.
See, you can have kids go through this every 2 seconds. So you can have them streaming basically through the walkthroughs because of the way I've been able to set up the sensitivity. I would love to give you a demonstration. I've offered to give Rick Scott a demonstration. I've offered to give Rick Francis with Seminole County, the police officer who handles
and they've rejected it, huh?
And I have never gotten anybody to come to it. I contacted Rick Scott's office and let him know that, hey, you can, and wanted to show how quickly I can get people, kids through these machines and keep everybody safe.
Go ahead and text your email. Do you have text messaging?
Yes.
Text your email to 23680. Okay?
232. I'm sorry, what?
23680. That's our text line. Text your email, say who you are, and that way I can contact you, okay?
All right. Well, I'd love to do so.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thinks metal detectors will work. I'm a little skeptical on that. Let's go to Jeremiah in Orlando. Jeremiah, what's your take this morning?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's up to the students. The one commonality amongst all these school shooters is that these kids were all bullied, and bullied to the point where they're so out of the group they might as well be dead. I mean, I've kind of been to that point in my life before.
Oh, really?
And,
you were bullied as a kid?
Yeah, and they.
Wow, I'm sorry to hear that.
I got my way out. I mean, I got my way out of it, and it made me a lot stronger at the end. But the thing is that they say it's a mental health issue, but really, when you're so ostracized that you might as well be dead, the only logical response is to take revenge on the people who wronged you like that. And the thing is, if one of those kids invited Nicholas Cruz to a party, this probably never would have happened.
Wow, you actually believe that?
Yeah,
I'm
100%.
not sure, man. This guy was really out of it. But you think bullying's really the only thing that bothers me about that theory is bullying has been around forever. It's not new. But these mass shootings are new, at least the frequency of them.
Right. Well, back in the 50s and 60s, your parents used to tell you, "Hey, go punch the bully in the nose." And when they did that, it moved them up a couple ranks in the social hierarchy. They weren't, So you think these zero tolerance policies, you can't do anything, and it's
Gotcha.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Jeremiah, I appreciate it. So some of that could be the parents' fault then for not teaching their kids how to deal with these issues, and they go and become mentally unstable.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about bullying as the cause, something you've said numerous times, not only on this radio show, but all over the place, is that you can't legislate morality. And so the idea that we're going to stop all bullying in schools is outrageous. It's not going to happen.
It's up to our culture. It's up to the parents. It's up to us as a people.
So the only thing that you're going to do is if you're not going to stop bullying in schools, then you're going to teach children how to defend themselves from bullies.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Scott in Orlando, what's your take on this? Scott?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Last year when I took my kid to school, the security guard sat in his car and he was on his phone, texting. Monday, when I took my kid to school, the police officer's sitting in his car texting. I look at my son, I go, "What's he doing?" He goes, "He's texting." They need to take these phones away from these securities and put them on the radio system because we know how texting distracts drivers, students, and this and that. They're spending more time on their phone. And they need to take this security in-house with the school board because look what happened in Parkland. Look what happened at Pulse nightclub. You need to have someone to say, take the shooter out, not stand down.
Gotcha. All right, Scott, I appreciate your call. I have to tell you, if I were a parent and I was taking my kid to school and the cop was in the car texting and not paying attention, I think I would probably be a little upset too. So I definitely understand why you're upset at that. All right, Deborah Roberts just came in next to me in the studio. She's going to talk about that Stand Your Ground case, which has been a big story here in Florida for the past few weeks. And we have that in Orlando's news, weather, and traffic coming up in 2 minutes. Deborah Roberts. Good morning, Deb. How are you?
Fat and sassy like usual. How are you?
It's not... You're not fat and sassy, and it's not like usual. But go ahead with the news. What is usual is your news.
Well, thank you. And bond for the shooter in Clearwater Stand Your Ground case remains at $100,000, and he's been appointed a public defender. Yesterday, Michael Draka made his first court appearance since being charged with manslaughter in the death of Marquise McLaughlin. If Draka does bond out of jail, he'll be required to wear an ankle monitor, stay in Pinellas County, and stay away from McLaughlin's relatives. Prosecutors also say they'll suspend his concealed carry permit. This news brought to you by Trustco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. Cleveland Browns fans, good news. You will have the opportunity to celebrate your team's first regular season win with free beer. Bud Light is placing victory fridges filled with beer at 10 Cleveland area bars. When the game officially ends and the Browns have come out victorious, the electromagnet being used to keep the fridges locked will be turned off with a Wi-Fi connection.
So people just walk up and grab some?
Absolutely. Free beer.
I don't know if this is a good idea.
No, well, wait till I finish the story to figure out. Yeah, it'll probably be crazy even without the beer. Now, in order to be eligible for the free 16-ounce aluminum bottle, fans must be inside the bar when the clock runs out, and they must be 21 years old. Last season, the Browns became just the second team in NFL history to finish 0-16.
Well, that's what I was going to say. There was two thoughts I had when I first saw this story. One, they're just really desperate to get Browns fans to watch the game. And two, they're really not worried about it because the Browns aren't going to win any games.
And like I said, it's going to get crazy whether or not the Browns, whether you get the free beer or not.
Yeah.
When they get a win, Cleveland is going to go crazy.
That's true.
Meanwhile, a mental health company is offering Mets fans free confidential therapy sessions to help them deal with a troubled season. The New York Daily News reports UMA Health, a New York-based online mental health marketplace, is providing the help for folks who aren't able to see a therapist. Folks can visit umahealth.com/Mets, put in your email address, and your most troubling Mets moment this year, and they're promising to get back to them with some counseling options.
You know what I'd like to see?
What?
What was it, uahealth.com you said?
UMA.
UMA Health? I'd like to see umahealth.com/vets instead of /Mets for our veterans who need counseling and can't afford to get counseling.
Well, I'm certainly hoping that they're way ahead of you on that one. I hope they wouldn't offer it to Mets fans before they would offer it to the vets. Absolutely.
I don't know.
Way to kill the segment, Paul. That's great. That's DOA right here. Yeah, that's
a good point, though.
Yeah, it is a good point. I don't know if I feel like talking about Girl Scout cookies now, though.
How could you talk about Girl Scout cookies when the vets need our help?
I know.
Actually, you have to talk about it because I love Girl Scout cookies.
Do you? Well, you're really going to love them now because they're offering a new cookie next year.
Really?
Ooh, a new cookie?
Yes, caramel chocolate chip. What? It'll be the second gluten-free option as well, joining the Toffee-tastic cookies. The caramel chocolate chip cookie will have caramel and semi-sweet chocolate chips with a hint of sea salt combined to create a sweet and salty taste in a chewy cookie. There are now 12 different cookie options to choose from. Not to be outdone, Krispy Kreme has announced it will sell Reese's Donut for a limited time.
Ooh.
Now we're talking.
Here we go.
Oh, that sounds good.
All right, I hit the sweet spot. The donut has many Reese's pieces, Hershey's chocolate fudge icing, caramel and peanut butter sauce drizzles.
Why is this not in front of me right now?
It's called the Reese's Outrageous Donut, and it'll be around for a limited time. You're welcome. And finally, today is National Lemon Meringue Pie Day. Either one of you guys like lemon meringue pie?
Yeah, I do.
All right. Well, the dessert, for those who don't know, is made of a shortbread pastry, lemon curd filling, and topped with meringue, which is made of egg whites, sugar, and lemon. The first lemon meringue pie originated from the first ever lemon pie that was made in the 19th century.
So today is relaxation day.
Lemon meringue pie day.
So I got to relax while eating some lemon meringue pie and a Reese's donut.
Yeah, there you go.
And then go on to buy some Girl Scout cookies.
And then sign up for a health screening.
Yes, exactly.
Not on relaxation day. No. Kill the mood. All right, Deb, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So we are having fun here, and it's time for you to join us for some fun because it's the Sound Judgment game is coming up right now. If you want a chance to win a great prize, Call right now, 407-916-5400. 407-916-5400 for the sound judgment game. We have that in Orlando's news, weather, and traffic here in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Yes, and it's time for some fun and games because we have the sound judgment question coming up here in just a second. And a great chance to win a great prize. And Steph is in the control room, and she's going to tell you what that prize is.
Yes, Yaffee. So today we have a 4-pack of tickets to Disney on Ice presents Mickey's Search Party at the Amway Center happening September 7th through the 9th. Tickets are on sale now. Visit 1025WFLA.com. Keyword events for more info.
All right, so the sound judgment question. I saw a story yesterday that I thought was really interesting. It was reported yesterday that a previously unknown part of the Berlin Wall was discovered. People had thought the whole wall had been torn down, but some people on a walking tour in Berlin came across a 66-foot section of the wall that was still there.
That's a huge section to not find.
Yeah, apparently it was previously covered up by trees and shrubs, and people didn't know it was there. And it was recently discovered because there's some construction going on in the area and a walking tour. It had some graffiti on it as well. People didn't know it was there for this long. I thought that was fascinating. So for today's sound judgment game, I want you to listen to this report from NBC News. When the Berlin Wall came down in 1989, then use your sound judgment to tell me how many miles long was the wall that separated East and West Berlin. Here it is.
The Berlin Wall, that ominous barrier between communism and democracy, was torn down symbolically yesterday when East Germany opened its borders to immigration and travel. But today, sections of the wall are being knocked down physically, not just by kids, but by soldiers of East Germany as well as citizens.
All right, so that was the report from when that happened, that fateful day. But how long, when it was up, was the wall, how many miles long was the wall that separated East and West Berlin? Let's go to line one. Line one, how long was it?
Good morning. I'm going to say it was 20 miles long.
Ooh, not a bad guess. You're actually pretty close, but it was longer than that. Let's go to line two. Line two, what do you think?
27.
27's exactly right. Nice job. Did you go out there and get a measuring tape and measure it yourself, or how did you know that?
That first guy was close, and I just took a guess.
Just took a guess. Oh, yeah, that was a really good guess. Yes, 27 miles long for the part of the wall that separated East and West Berlin. All right, what's your name? Where are you calling from today?
Ron in Apopka.
Ron, are you excited about that prize?
Yeah, I'd take my grandkids.
Great. That's 2 days in a row we've had people able to take their grandkids. I'm glad we're helping the grandparents out there spoil their grandkids. I mean, that is your job, to spoil your grandkids.
Well, I grew up winning prizes, and I took my kids for
nice
15 years winning prizes from you guys.
Oh, really? So you've won from us before?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so it's like now we're passing down to the next generation. I like that.
Sure are.
All right. Hold on, and Steph will tell you how you can get that prize, and congratulations on that.
Another happy contest winner on WFLA.
Yeah, that was definitely a story I had to look into. The anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall was earlier this week. But when I've heard that, 66-foot section of the wall, we just found it. I'm like, how do you not know that part of it's there?
Like nobody saw, 66 feet worth of wall just
because it's not like it moved around.
Right.
It was in the same spot the whole time. So that was fascinating, and the pictures are pretty cool as well if you see them online. All right, we have the Rush Morning Update on Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. So I know a lot of you will have an opinion on our next topic for the next half hour, and I definitely want to get your take on the fact that there is a new poll out by Gallup that shows more Democrats hold a positive view of socialism than capitalism. The question I have for you, and I want you to call 407-916-5400. You can also text to 23680, is why? Why is this the trend now in the Democrat Party? Why do they have this favorable view of an economic system that has been proven not to work time and time and time again. There are many different reasons for this, which I'm going to get into in the next half hour, but I want your take as well. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. But before we do that, Deborah Roberts is going to come in. She has the latest news for us at the top of the hour. She's going to talk about the Clearwater Stand Your Ground shooter making a court appearance, and the Utah firefighter who died fighting a California fire is mourned. It's 8 o'clock here on Good Morning Orlando. Good Morning Orlando. This is Orlando's news, weather, and traffic here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Filling in for Bud today, this is Yaffee.
And I'm Deborah Roberts, and our top stories this morning. The Clearwater Stand Your Ground shooter makes a court appearance, and a Utah firefighter who died fighting a California fire is mourned. We'll have the details coming up in 1 minute.
New Gallup poll shows that Democrats have a more positive view of socialism than capitalism. My question to you, why? We'll get to that this half hour.
Happy Hump Day. It's 8:02 on News Radio 102.5. Michael Draka is represented by a public defender in his Stand Your Ground case. The 48-year-old Clearwater man made his first court appearance Tuesday on manslaughter charges. Outside the courthouse, Benjamin Crump, who represents the girlfriend of Marquise McLaughlin, says the state's Stand Your Ground law will hinge on this case.
We're encouraging everybody who feels this issue is important for the lives of their children, of their loved ones, to go out and vote like your life depended on it.
McLaughlin was shot and killed July 19th during a confrontation with Draka in a Clearwater convenience store parking lot. Draka claims he shot McLaughlin in self-defense, but the Pinellas Pasco State Attorney's Office charged Draka with first-degree manslaughter Monday. This news brought to you by Trusco Bank, Florida's hometown bank.
And you have your Legal Briefs segment later this hour with Jeff Kaufman. And he has given his opinion on this case before the prosecutors did. So you're going to ask him about what the prosecutors decided today, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're going to be talking to him about that, as well as some news about the FIU pedestrian bridge collapse. Remember Florida International University? Yeah. Apparently there's a story that a law may protect them from lawsuits that they're facing from the victims' families. We'll also ask him about that. And, of course, Paul Manafort's trial. But if you have a pressing legal question you'd like Attorney Jeff Kaufman to handle, please, you've got time. Text it over to us to 23680.
Yeah, he's really knowledgeable, so my ears are always tuned in when he's on the show.
Yeah, the only attorney, literally the only attorney in the entire country who is able to work in 18 states. He's licensed in 18 states. They even changed the rules after him so that no other attorney could do it.
That's amazing.
Speaking of Stand Your Ground, a judge is denying the Stand Your Ground motion claimed by George Chronister, the son of Hillsborough County Sheriff Chad Chronister. That means his self-defense case will be decided by a jury. George Chronister is accused of stabbing and slashing a rapper in a fight last year. Because of a possible conflict, the case will be tried by the Sarasota Manatee State Prosecutor. Flash flood warnings are out across New York and Pennsylvania as thunderstorms keep soaking the Northeast. The region's having a record wet summer, and heavy flooding has engulfed parts of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. The report says floodwaters rose so quickly in some areas that it trapped people in their homes and businesses. Out west, colleagues of a Utah firefighter killed while fighting the ranch fire in California are remembering him as someone who would do whatever it took. Draper Mayor Troy Walker says Fire Battalion Chief Matthew Burkett did things others wouldn't.
These men are American heroes. They go out, they literally stand in the fire to help other people. I don't know how you get better than that. I know he was proud to do it. I know all of them are.
Draper Fire Battalion Chief Bart Vaudry says Matthew Burkett is an expert at wildland fires and someone who had mastered his craft. Burkett, who is also a battalion chief in Draper, died Monday night when a tree fell on him. The ranch fire now, though, is 100% contained. Meanwhile, firefighters in Northern California are making progress against the biggest wildfire in that state's history. Firefighters have already contained the smaller of the two fires that are forming the Mendocino complex. The larger of the two is still burning, though, but crews now have it at 64% containment. The Mendocino complex fire has burned over 354,000 acres. That's bigger than the city of Los Angeles. Another major fire burning in Northern California is the Carr Fire near Redding. That's burned over 211,000 acres and is now 65% contained.
You know, one thing that was really disturbing to see was we think about the fires and the general area of the fires, but the fires create a lot of smoke. And there's been satellite images of the state of California. A lot of the state, you know, places not even near the fires, covered in smoke.
Yeah.
And that so it's affecting a lot more people than just the general area of the fire.
Not to mention it's, you know, affecting airline travel and everything because they can't fly through that kind of smoke.
Well, it also affects, you know, some of the vineyards there because the smoke can really affect the grapes in the vineyards, and it makes, you know, you can try to make wine out of it, but it just tastes like ash.
And of course, they're known for their wines.
Yeah.
So anything to help them end these fires. But then, of course, then the monsoon season starts.
Yep.
Closer to home, a fatal industrial accident on Walt Disney World property this morning is under investigation. Orange County Sheriff's deputies say a 61-year-old man died early this morning after falling into a vat of oil at an energy facility near Disney's Animal Kingdom. They say he and a co-worker were emptying oil and grease, a byproduct from a semi-truck, when the man slipped and fell into the vat. The co-worker tried but was unable to help the man, who became overcome by fumes. His body was recovered from the vat by Reedy Creek firefighters. And finally, the key to stopping the red tide outbreak could be located in Lee County, Southwest Florida. A Cape Coral company called Ecological Laboratories claims it has a product called Microbe Lift that can kill red tide.
Really?
Yeah. They say it works by releasing microbes that eat the same food the algae eat, only the microbes do it faster, which basically starves the algae to death.
Oh, the hotels on the beaches over there would love this product.
And state officials as well.
Yeah.
In fact, a company exec tells NBC2 it's working with the Department of Environmental Protection to test the product in 12 waterways. Let's hope it works.
Yeah.
WFLA News Time, it's 8:08, and you can watch as police evacuate 60 animals from an SPCA as a wildfire approaches in California. Check out the dramatic video at 1025WFLA.com. The third hour of Good Morning Orlando starts now.
From News Radio 1025, this is Good Morning Orlando.
So I'm already getting texts and calls coming in on this new poll that shows that Democrats have a more positive view of socialism than capitalism. Some texters are wondering why I find this odd. I'm not too surprised actually by it, but I still want to ask the question why. Why are Democrats seeing it this way? We'll talk about that next. Deb has a word here. Then we have the texting contest as well for your chance to win a trip to Las Vegas. What you want to do is listen for the keyword in a minute, text it to 200-200. And of course, after that, we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just a couple minutes. News Radio 1025 WFLA. And this is Yaffee filling in for Bud here from the Front Gate Realty Studio. Dial pound 250. Use the keyword real estate. So, do you remember right before President Obama was elected and inaugurated when he said this?
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
Fundamentally transforming the United States of America. I do believe Obama did transform us in some ways, although not as in many ways as he wanted to, because he had a Republican Congress stopping him from doing a lot of things. That being said, if you want to see a real transformation, a real fundamental transformation in this country, it would actually come from someone like a Bernie Sanders and his socialist policies, the kind of policies that he really wants to implement and has been open about are fundamental transformation, something that would change this country for a very long time and be very hard to go back to the way it should be. The unfortunate thing is many Democrats apparently want that. According to Gallup, a majority of Democrats no longer hold a positive view of capitalism, while nearly 60%, 57% to be exact, of them feel good about socialism. 57% of Democrats feel good about socialism and have a negative view of capitalism. 57% of those between 18 and 29 viewed capitalism positively in 2016. Only 45% feel the same way in 2018. Why do so many Democrats feel positive about socialism? Well, there's a few reasons. One is education. Not only is there more and more economists and professors in universities that are preaching the benefits of socialism, but economics really isn't taught a lot in grade school. In fact, I remember only getting one economics class in grade school, and that was my senior year, and it was for one semester. It wasn't even the full year. So we're not teaching our kids economics or capitalism or the value of capitalism. I think one of the other reasons as well is ever since the end of the Cold War, over the years, we got rid of the boogeyman of the Soviet Union. That was gone. It was easier to denounce socialism when we could point to the Soviet Union as an example. Kids growing up today grew up without the Soviet Union being around, so they don't have that example anymore. I think one of the other reasons, though, is this lie that the Scandinavian countries like Norway or Sweden or these European countries, these European-style socialism, that's a good thing, that we should go in that route. You know, conservatives will often point out Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, socialist countries, and say, why would you want anything like that? And we should point that out because that is an example of the dangers of socialism. But you also usually will have the Democrats will say, yeah, those are bad, but we want to be like Norway, or we want to be like Sweden, or we want to be like Europe, ignoring the many, many problems that those countries have. Just look at the problems with the British healthcare system right now. They have a lot of issues. I think those are some of the main reasons why people in the Democrat Party especially are preferring socialism to capitalism. Other reasons are the fact that they're just more open about it. Bernie Sanders is just more open about it. The Democrat Party used to be more for it, but it was kind of under the radar. A lot of that has to do with the Soviet Union existing at the time, but they're just more open about it. What do you think the reason is? 407-916-5400, text to 23680. And what would that socialism look like? What would a Bernie Sanders socialist country look like? What would this country look like after that? It would be a fundamental transformation. And what are the dangers of a European-style socialist system? I'm going to get to that as well. We'll take your calls and text 407-916-5400, text to 23680. It is 8:19 here on Good Morning Orlando. So there is a new study out there, by the way, from the Manhattan Institute that shows that Democratic socialist policies of Bernie Sanders would cost $42.5 trillion in new spending over the next decade. You want to talk about fundamental transformation, you want to talk about what socialism would cause, that's fundamental transformation. That's one of the dangers of socialism. But there are obviously many, many more dangers. Why do Democrats like socialism now? I gave my take. Let's get your take. Let's go to Jim in Brevard County. Jim, what's your take?
I think the reason they're embracing socialism is because if it's ever enacted, the Constitution would have to be ended. And the Constitution keeps government in check. Socialism won't. They won't have to answer to the people anymore.
Interesting. All right. Well, I think there's a decent point there. Usually they want to get rid of the Constitution as a means to getting socialism instead of socialism being a means to end the Constitution. But it could be the other way around. We'll see that. Let's go to Susan in Castleberry. Susan, what do you think?
Hey, Mike, you're doing a great job, but don't confuse communism with socialism. But the point that I want to make is the reason why capitalism has really become tarnished for me is, for example, there was all of these tax cuts given to corporations and businesses at the beginning of this year with, the promise of the myth of trickle down. And right now I am in the job market, and I can tell you firsthand that those wages have not gone up in any significant way since 4 or more years ago when I was last in the job market. So that's one reason, is that socialism would, require employers to provide a living wage, not just a minimum wage, but a living wage. And
Gotcha,
I think that's
Susan.
a really good point.
All right, and that obviously she is a Democrat. She has called many times before, but this is something I hear a lot from Democrats, that they feel like corporations are too greedy, the business world is too greedy, and that we have to have socialist policies because the business capitalism isn't getting it done. I think a lot of this comes from basically an ignorance of economics, that a lot of these problems that Susan talks about, that caused the Great Recession, that caused a lot of these economic issues that we're dealing with right now, are caused by big government socialist policies. Capitalism capitalism in itself isn't about, morality in a sense, like forcing big businesses to do that. Big businesses sometimes still do act greedy. But capitalism is the best system, I believe, that creates the most opportunity for the most people and incentivizes businesses and business growth and economic growth in this country. That's really what I believe. And there's a myth out there that a lot of these problems in our economy were caused by capitalism, and I just don't believe that. Capitalism is not perfect, but socialism would be a lot worse. Let's go to another call. Let's go to Jim in Groveland. Jim, what's your take?
Yeah, I wanted to mention that the United States, which is the largest and most successful capitalist nation in the world, is the place that the socialists run to when they get in trouble. And if you just look around the world, we don't have the problems that the socialist countries do. Also, in regard to some of the things about the socialist structure, because of socialism, if we have socialism, see, I'm a small business dealer, and I have to compete. If you have everything under government, there's no competition. They can charge you anything they want to and just tax the dickens out of you. And that's the way it works with socialism. You can see it happening in the social structure of our cities and so forth. Yeah. You look at the fire department. I mean, the fire departments have everything they want, everything they need, and all they have to do is tax the people more.
Well, yeah, it takes away the accountability. Yeah, competition adds accountability to the business world and accountability to the market, where socialism takes away a lot of that accountability because the government doesn't have that accountability because, like you said, they just spend and spend and spend without consequences.
I think a part of the problem is, and we run into this over and over again, is the extremes on each side. You'll have the extremes on the left who want complete and total, government regulation of everything. Everybody gets 4 oranges a day because everybody has to have an equal amount of everything. And then you have the extremes on the other side that want completely no regulations whatsoever. Business can do anything it wants to do, anytime it wants to do, with all the freedom in the world, and nobody ever keeps anything moral or ethical. And it's just really hard to find that median space.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to be more libertarian when it comes to economics because I believe that capitalism kind of incentivizes businesses to act better. I mean, that's my opinion on that. And when you talk about socialism, it seems like the moral system on paper, but when it's actually worked out in real life, it's not.
Right.
It's kind of my opinion.
And it works both ways because when you look at, I tend to lean libertarian on economic issues as well, but I also recognize that even though we treat businesses as people, they are not people, and they have one sole obligation, and that is to create more money for the people who have invested money into the business. And everything else they do is just kind of gravy and icing on the cake. But their number one goal is to make more money for the people who've invested.
Yeah, I mean, some people do create businesses to do more than that, mostly small businesses. But you're right, the goal is to make money. And there's a kind of a myth out there that that's an evil thing to make money. It really isn't an evil thing. But you're right in a sense that capitalism alone doesn't create a moral society. There still has to be a moral religious foundation in a society for that to work. And if that doesn't work, we end up losing our freedoms because then the government fills that vacuum.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of the problem is. All right, it's 8:31 here on Good Morning Orlando. Deborah Roberts is in the studio with me. In just about 10 minutes or so, she's going to have her legal brief segment with Jeff Kaufman. But before we have that, we have the latest news.
Yes, we do. And real quick, I want to let folks know you still have time to text your question. Our one listener already has. Going to get to your question as soon as our segment with attorney Jeff Kaufman begins. But quick, send us your question to 23680. Again, the only attorney in the country who is licensed in 18 states. The big story of the day, Clearwater Stand Your Ground shooter Michael Draco made his first court appearance on a manslaughter charge Tuesday. Bond remained at $100,000, and he'll have to wear an ankle monitor and avoid contact with the family of Marquise McLaughlin, the man he's accused of killing. Outside the Pinellas County Courthouse, attorney Benjamin Crump, who represents McLaughlin's girlfriend, believes the state's Stand Your Ground law will be changed eventually.
We are a government for the people, by the people. And just because they decided in Tallahassee not to have a special session on Stand Your Ground, where the people of Florida get to have a special session this November.
Prosecutors say they're suspending Draco's concealed gun permit. The next step is a Stand Your Ground hearing for the 48-year-old. Draco's supporters are also trying to raise money to bail him out of jail. This news brought to you by Trusco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. Well, if the apocalypse ever comes, I know who I'm calling. This Phoenix woman who says she killed a rattlesnake in her backyard and then ate it. 3TV.
Well, I mean, can't let it go to waste.
You know, seriously. 3TV reports the unidentified woman hit the snake over the head with a shovel to protect her dogs. Her dad reportedly suggested keeping the skin as a souvenir and eating the meat. And
I wonder what it tastes like.
Dad knows best. Probably chicken.
Because
everything tastes like chicken.
I have a feeling it's more chewy, more gamey or something. I don't know. Never had a desire, actually, to taste it.
I haven't either. I can honestly say.
I wonder if she just ate it fried or put it in a soup or something.
A fricassee? I mean, who knows?
I know, because it really doesn't matter, but
she ate the snake she just killed. That's the takeaway.
Right.
That's the takeaway. Firefighters had to rescue a southwestern Illinois man from deep mud after he became stuck while trying to reach his pet parrot. Firefighters were called Sunday afternoon to the city's Bicentennial Park after a visitor heard the man calling for help. Well, when firefighters showed up, he was up to his waist in mud that the fire chief says was really like quicksand.
Oh, wow.
Video shows firefighters extending ladders across the mud to help him out, all as the parrot remains perched on his shoulders.
Yeah.
Good news, neither man nor bird was
cute.
injured. Poor says the police chief says the man likes to ride his bike around with the parrot on his shoulder. So
that's so cool. A loyal pet. I like that.
That is a loyal pet. And finally, police are investigating after a video shows a man spanking a hippopotamus at the Los Angeles Zoo. Jeez. The video shows the man crossing a railing last week and sneaking up on two hippos, Rosie and Mara. He smacks Rosie on the rear, and her mother lifts her head as the man runs off and raises his arms in a gesture of victory. Zoo spokeswoman.
I shouldn't laugh at that, but I bet it's pretty funny, actually.
It is funny, man. It's funny. And what would have been, I mean, apparently this guy does not know that hippos kill more people than lions and tigers. And
that's what I was saying. You are gutsy if you're doing that. You're crazy, honestly.
No, you're dumb.
Yeah,
you're dumb.
They are dangerous animals.
Very, especially since it was a mother and her daughter. So you can imagine she could have been really tore him up if he had slipped and fallen in the enclosure. Well, the zoo didn't even know that it happened until the video made it onto social media. So they're now investigating the case as a case of trespassing because the hippo didn't appear to be injured, but still they want to make sure future idiots don't try something like this.
It's interesting how stuff like this ends up on video and people think, they got away with it, but no, they can prosecute you later. There was that case, I forget where it was, where the guy was taunting a buffalo.
Oh, yeah.
And he was eventually arrested for that.
Yes, he was. Yes,
they
he
caught
was.
up to him.
Plus, look, here in Florida, we have the shark dragging case.
Yeah,
Another social media video that led to charges. Guys in the Brevard County jumping on the back of a manatee. Another case of social media that ended in charges. So they will track you down.
Yeah.
You, out of the gene pool. And that's it, so we can make room and
All right, yes, Legal Briefs with Jeff Kaufman. He's coming in just a sec. They have a lot of great stuff to talk about. I'm going to be listening intently, as I always do. And we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA.
8:43 Wednesday morning. It's time for Legal Briefs with attorney Jeff Kaufman, nationally recognized personal injury attorney, as you heard me say earlier this morning, the only attorney in the country who is licensed to practice in 18 states. Good morning, Jeff.
It is a good morning.
It is a good morning. Welcome back. We've got a lot to get to, including some text questions that our listeners have sent in. But first, what we want to do definitely is to get your take on the update of the Stand Your Ground shooting case out of Clearwater, now that Bernie McCabe, the state attorney on the Gulf Coast, has decided that Michael Draco will indeed face a first-degree manslaughter charge, a charge his office says they believe they will be able to get a conviction on. What's your feeling on that?
They said the reason why they did this is because they had video evidence, they had some witnesses. I mean, you never know what you have until you're able to get these people in a room and find out. But just because a state attorney says they have something doesn't mean they actually have something. I mean, we have some of our most classic cases in history in Central Florida because the state attorney believed that he had something.
Casey Anthony,
yeah,
come to
exactly.
mind.
Casey Anthony, Zimmerman.
Yeah.
I mean, we can run the list on this one.
All right. So what will be your prediction on how this case will come out, do you think?
Unless they have a witness to show that this guy wasn't in fear or wasn't in this altercation, then you have the problem. I mean, for example, if there's evidence that the guy turned around and was walking away and got shot in the back, but if he got shot right in the front as he was attacking, that's going to be a problem. But, you'll listen to witnesses, you'll hear what they have to say. But right now, the evidence that we have doesn't support it. They might have something that we don't know.
Now, manslaughter carries less of a preponderance of the evidence versus a first-degree murder. What is the legal difference between manslaughter and murder?
Planning.
Okay,
Planning.
so that's this.
Like, for example, let's say Yaffee and I had an issue. And I show
Yaffee.
up at Yaffee. Let's say I get a little upset at Yaffee today.
Oh, we all do.
And I just jump over the table and strangle him.
I've done it.
That's manslaughter.
Oh.
Now, if I got mad at him and next week I was plotting, I wrote down all the stuff, I was waiting for him to come to his car, I had an anvil like Wile E. Coyote to drop on his head or something, that's first degree murder.
I see. So planning is the only difference.
There's a lot of difference, but I mean, planning is really the big one.
Okay.
One is the heat of passion. I get into it. I just can't help it. He just makes me so crazy that I killed him. That's the difference.
Wow, it's like you've worked here.
Well, I thought about it.
So on the heels of the Italy bridge collapse yesterday, where 37 people, at least, the death toll is expected to climb, but the new number is 37 people have died, comes news that prosecutors here in Florida may have a tough time proving their case if they decide to bring criminal charges against the companies involved in the deadly Florida International University pedestrian bridge collapse. Now, this is according to the Miami Herald, reporting that Florida law favorably treats contractors after construction accidents. What do you see is going to be on the side of the victims to prove that there was negligence, i.e., there's the voicemail of the engineer calling and saying that there were cracks found, but that they don't think those cracks would be a problem?
You have to show such a level of negligence, incompetence, that anybody in their right mind would have known this was a danger. And that's where it's not about the laws that protect contractor. It's just being able to prove that the person who made that decision or was involved in making that decision knew this was going to happen or really, really should have known. So that's really, like, for example, let's say he watered down the concrete. Things like that you're talking about.
No, so even though there is that voicemail where they admit that there's cracks, but they don't think that should be a problem, of course, the defense for the contractors will bring experts in who say that that is probably a regular occurrence. So what we as the public think, well, there's cracks. You should have known it was dangerous.
Well, there's always cracks. There's cracks all over the place when you think about it. But how quick did it crack? For example, when they created the monorail, Metro Rail in Miami originally, the columns had these big cracks in it, and they knew that they watered down the concrete. Now they have to show in this case, was that naturally occurring? Does this happen? What is the, there's a lot of math that goes into this.
All right. Well, speaking of contractors, a listener had texted us their question to 23680 saying that they drive a company truck and it's apparently equipped with a camera and he's told, or she's told, a microphone. I have never received any paperwork nor been officially told anything. Is there any legal obligation the company has?
To tell them that they're videotaping and they have audio?
That they're audio and video recording.
we've discussed this before as far dealing with Trump and places like that. Certain states allow one party to tape without them knowing. It's the minority. New York happens to be one of those. But in Florida, you have to know. In this case, they stuck a camera in front of you.
Right.
So you should know that that's a possibility of happening. You don't get to say, I don't want that to happen. If you don't want that to happen, move jobs. I mean, I know that's a terrible idea, but the concept is that they put this camera out there. It's the same way as 7-Elevens, for example. The cameras that are behind the counters, they're not to protect the customers. They're to make sure that the people aren't stealing. The same way in bars where they put the camera behind them. You know, if you see the camera, you should know.
So basically, by accepting terms of employment, you're accepting that your likeness and your voice is going to be recorded.
Exactly. It's unbelievably uncomfortable. I had a camera behind me as a lawyer one time, and it really made me crazy. But it wasn't audio, but it's still, I didn't like to be watched.
Well, we've got cameras that collect both video and audio in the newsroom at all moments of the day. So I make it a personal goal to make it as entertaining as possible.
Well, we do this Facebook Live, so people get to see us anyway. So I know it's happening.
Yeah. Well, listen, how can folks get a hold of you if they weren't able to text in their question? I know you practice personal injury.
Yeah, we do primarily personal injury, but we also offer our free wills at whenyouneedus.com.
Which is a great tool. It's like you said before, it's very basic, but if it's all you have, it's better than nothing should the unexpected happen and you leave your family in a lurch.
And there's some terrible videos that'll show you exactly how to do it online.
Okay. They're not terrible videos. Jeff, thank you so much once again for coming in and joining us for our legal briefs.
Always my pleasure.
And keep it right here. Mike Yaffee will be back to chair the 50,000-watt front porch on News Radio 102.5 WFLA.
So earlier in the hour, we were talking about this new poll that shows that a majority of Democrats have a favorable view of socialism and not so favorable view of capitalism. One of the reasons I gave for why this is, and I hear this all the time from people on the left, because people on the right, rightfully so, will look at history and they'll show failures of socialism in the Soviet Union. They'll look at Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, China before they started to turn more capitalistic, even though they're not fully there yet. And those are good examples of why socialism is a problem. But usually the left will say, well, you have to look at countries like Denmark, or you have to look at countries like Norway, you have to look at countries like Sweden. They're great. And they'll say it's democratic socialism, and that's what we need. Well, and I know this is the third time I've done this week, but I'm pulling off a little bit of audio from a segment of the Florida Roundtable, which I co-host with Reagan Smith. This is just a reason why you have to listen to that show on the weekends, Saturday nights here on WFLA, but it's syndicated across Florida. The podcast is up as well, anywhere podcasts are available. About a year ago, we interviewed a guy by the name of Thomas DiLorenzo. He has a great book that you can get on Amazon or anywhere else called The Problems with Socialism. One reason why it's such a good book is not only because he addresses the problems with socialism in places like North Korea, but he goes over a lot of stats why socialism is failing in places like Europe, Sweden, Norway, those countries. In fact, here's a little bit of him talking about why socialism is a problem in a country like Sweden. Here it is.
Sweden is a good example. It was a low-tax, limited government, high economic freedom society in the late 19th, early 20th centuries, and they created Volvo and Saab automobiles and Alfred Nobel, who invented dynamite, and they were the highest. They had the highest per capita income growth for about 60 years. Then they adopted socialism in the 1950s. They nationalized industries and grew a big welfare state, and there was not a single new job created in Sweden from 1950 until 2005. And so they basically destroyed their economy and lived off the efforts of previous generations of capitalists. And they eventually tried to bail themselves out by printing money like mad. And they created 500% interest rates in Sweden in the 1980s. And there was a bit of a Margaret Thatcher-style revolt over there where they privatized a lot of industries, cut taxes, cut back on government. But they still have a per capita income lower than Mississippi, which is our poorest state. And so it's a myth that we should adopt socialism on the Scandinavian variety. Only if you want to adopt poverty would you want to do that.
I would definitely recommend his book, The Problems with Socialism. He goes over a lot of stats on that. Another book that's really great on this subject is by John Stossel, the libertarian, called No They Can't, Why Government Fails But Individuals Succeed. There's a lot of other good books on economics as well. Republicans and conservatives really need to start combating this idea that democratic socialism in Europe is really a good thing, because it's a disaster there as well. A lot of the benefits came before they turned socialist, and they're still reaping the benefits from before that, but those benefits are starting to go away. All right, I appreciate you listening to the show today. We got a lot of different topics covered. If you missed any of it, check out the podcast on iHeartRadio. Search for Bud Hedinger on iHeartRadio, or it's on our website as well, 1025WFLA.com. I appreciate you listening to me as I've been filling in. Mark Wogus is filling in tomorrow. And I'll end the show just like Bud does. God bless you, and God bless America. Catch you next time.